Welcome to How to Decorate from Ballard Designs, a weekly podcast all about the trials and triumphs of decorating and redecorating your home. I'm Caroline, I'm on the marketing team.
And I'm Taryn, and I'm a product designer.
I'm Liz, I head up the creative team.
We're your hosts. Join the expert team at Ballard Designs for tips, tricks, and tales from interior designers, stylists, and other talents in the design world.
Plus, we'll answer your decorating dilemmas at the end of each episode.
We love answering your questions, so don't forget to email us at podcast@ballarddesigns.net.
Now, on with the show.
Okay, this week we're excited to introduce a special 4-part spring gardening mini-series. So, for the next 4 weeks, we are going to be covering everything spring and gardening, from landscaping, setting up your outdoor space, planting, refreshing your pots for spraying house plants, shopping at the nursery, and even flower arranging and outdoor entertaining. And our first guest, we're excited to welcome back Mississippi-based landscape architect Brantley Snipes.
Hey, ladies.
She leads her own eponymous firm, Brantley Snipes Landscape Design, where she serves as owner, lead designer, and project manager. And she just launched her latest venture, Half Moon Living, where she does full-service installation projects. So, okay, Brantley, we had you on the show last. We talked about landscaping. We've talked about mulch. We've talked about pools, patios. I feel like we covered it all, but
Good.
we had
Let's
such
do
a
it
great
again.
time. We had to bring you back.
I can do it all day.
There's always so much more to talk about, and I feel
know.
like right now is the time where I know I'm getting the itch for like
Yeah.
getting my plants.
Right. It's like we were just talking about. Those first daffodils start popping, and it is like
Mhm.
spring. It's time to go.
It's magic.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's good. We made it. We survived another winter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it feels like with spring, there's so many possibilities, and you're thinking like, what possibilities are there in my yard that I haven't
Mhm.
capitalized on? You are so great at explaining exactly what we need to know and the planning all through the installation. And I took away so much from our last conversations.
Awesome.
So I'm excited to, start again, but
Yes.
also ask some follow-ups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And also a caveat for spring. Don't go start doing your spring pots yet. Wait till after Easter. It is
Okay.
warm. Things are blooming, but we will get an Easter freeze.
Mhm.
And that is something that I have to go toe-to-toe with clients every year. That first flush of 70 degrees, blue sky temps, everybody's like, I'm going to do my pots. And you're like, and then it's going to right there at Easter. So just a
Okay.
caveat before we go too far into things, don't do
idea.
your pots until after Easter. There will be plenty of times. I had a friend trying to plant zinnias last week, and I was like, "Oh, sister, we're not there yet. So
Oh.
we're close.
Yeah.
Let's kind of ease into it and talk about some other things we can be doing before we do pots.
But Easter's also late this year.
It is late this
It
year, but
is.
you will still always get an Easter freeze.
Okay.
That is an old deep South. It may come the week of Easter, but you will get.
Yeah.
We'll put money on it when I leave this afternoon. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've
be
always
patient.
heard Easter or tax day.
Yes, that's a good one too. So it's all
Mm.
somewhere, mid-April.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you're right. We do have a late Easter this year, but always just to be on the safe side.
Okay. Well, I did want to talk a little bit about planning because I
Okay.
think that, it's all well and good to want to plan your pots, but some of us might need a little bit more work than that.
Yep.
And maybe we have bigger projects that we need to accomplish. And, I know probably for some of your projects, they're multi-year,
Yeah,
know.
phasing. And that's
yes.
the great part about landscaping is you can take it bits and pieces at each
Mhm.
time. And it's not like you're building a house and you get the dining room done and you're like, well, we didn't get a bathroom in. So, we can really look at phasing things in and allocating your budget accordingly and how you want to spend money and, how we want to
Mhm.
go about that.
Well, talk us through the planning process. Like, what is a reasonable timeline if
Mhm.
you're in your house, there's a lot of options outdoors, but you have a vision or you want someone to help you with your vision.
Yeah.
And you want to, it's early March, early
You're
April
ready to be on the
here.
radio that you
But
don't
like,
have yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's a realistic timeline if you want to do
So,
something big?
That's a great, and the older I get and the more I do this, the more I'm a big advocate on doing things at the right time of year. So, you are thinking about being outside, you're ready to be outside, but we also, if we're doing a patio, let's say we're ready to do a patio, we've got it designed. Right now we are still dealing with the ground still being very wet, freezing and thawing, so your best time to really look at doing hardscapes is in the hot, dry summer months. You want to be planning now, but you actually want to install any kind of hardscape material in the summer when it's hot
Interesting.
and dry. And that means that your ground moisture is correct, the temperatures are right. Concrete gets kind of funky if it gets too cold, too quick. You can get some weird calcification within the concrete. So it's great to get out there and do things, but thinking through when to do it is the best time. So ideally, when you're installing, you're designing and planning during the winter months. You're getting going on your hardscaping when it starts to dry and get warmer. And then fall is your best time to install shrubs. So that is your ideal, perfect. I would sleep great at night if every project followed that timeline. Yeah.
Okay.
And if we're doing a lot of this lately with new construction with homes, please invite your landscape architect to the table before the home gets built. There's a lot to be thinking about in terms of grading, drainage, where your hardscape's going to go, how many steps, how you're going to get to it, where you're going to turn the car around. And I've watched so many clients make the mistake of being like, oh, we need to put some plants in the ground, and they haven't thought through all the logistics of the hardscape.
How could you have not have thought through your driveway?
So, and a lot of times, I do love architects. I work with a lot of really good architects. Architects or home designers will just throw one in and not really think through the approach to the house or where you're going to park. And, we as humans are lazy. We want to get to that door as fast as possible. We want guests to use the front door. We want to use the back door, and so that's stuff that really needs to be thought about in the overall design process,
right?
And then, of course, if you've got an existing home and you've lived there and you're ready to do some renovations, your flow, your circulation, where you'd like the space, and that gives you an opportunity to do that.
Okay, let's talk about driveways because, it seems like such a important aspect if you're building something new because, like you said, that's how you're going to, functionally, that's how you're going to get into your house every day.
Sure.
But then for any guests, you want to put your best foot forward. So is there, do you hide it? Where do you put your, what are
you do both?
Okay.
And it's all a private residence, but I call it a public entrance and I call it a private entrance because you don't want guests who are coming to dinner to come through the carport where they're tripping over basketballs and kids' bikes and pool noodles and stuff. So I try to keep that in mind when we're doing a design with a client is, let's get people to the front door. People spend a lot of money on the front porch, the front door, the front lighting, and then it goes away because everybody's just driving up. And it's a very kind of intricate balance of getting them in the right spot and getting them too close. We're doing this right now on a project in Oxford where we were trying to move the parking, but we moved it around the corner, which put the back door in the visual sight. And I was like, nobody's going to come to your front door. They're going to see your back door. That's the place. That's the path of least resistance. That's where they're going to go into your house. Let's do it over here where you pull up, you see the entire front, and you can't wait to walk down the pathway up to the door on the front and really be immersed in that. So you really kind of need to look at it, especially when you're laying out a house, if it's a perfectly blank spot of, where's the carport going to be? Where's the front going to be? Do we want it to face east, west? Are we catching the sun? You kind of got to play with that too. So it's a lot of factors that come into play. But my philosophy on that is public entrance, private entrance, and do not give anybody the choice because given the choice, they're going to be your best friend and they're going to come in through the carport and see
everything.
That's
totally true.
And you don't want to be rude, but it's like, the garages and carports are there for a reason, so you can just hide a bunch of stuff over there.
Storage.
It's storage, right. Yeah.
Okay, what about if you've got a neighborhood, my neighborhood, for example, guests mostly park on the street.
Yep.
So, walking up the driveway is not particularly charming.
Sure.
What do you do for do you have a path? Does the path go straight? Do you weave it around? How do you make it look?
You make it as easy as possible.
Okay.
For them to get to the street. And then also, if you are, say, the opportunity to get a sidewalk to the street isn't available and you need to get them up the driveway, I would come up a certain length on the driveway and then offer a walkway. And that's when you come in with landscape lighting, with, your shrubs, your flowers, and you create more of an experience where it's like, oh, if I'm coming to your house for dinner, it's dusk. you've got your carport lights off, but I see the landscape lighting kind of lead me up a path, and I'm like checking out different flowers along the way and the daffodils that are coming up, so you want your entrance to be an experience for guests, however that is. But you also want to make it, again, as close to that front door as possible, or it won't get used.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do the design work in the winter.
Yes.
We build hardscape in the summer.
Yep.
And then we install all of our plants in the fall.
Right.
So what would you say is a reasonable expectation for when your house or your landscape is going to look like done? Is that
like done?
Like 3 years, 5 years, 10
18
years?
months.
18 months.
18 months after you put your landscape in. They'll spend the first, and this is why we plant in the fall. Plants go dormant, of course, in the wintertime, but they are getting their root systems kind of situated. And so that allows them to kind of like get situated. And then when spring hits, they'll kind of grow, and then the next spring is when they'll really kind of flush out and really start blooming. So that's kind of your 18 months is about when you'll really start to see things. I had a client one time, they were like...
18 months after you plant.
After you plant.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So you need one full growing season, year, plus about 6 months, And I'm notorious, we'll finish a project and it'll look very sparse when we do it. I designed to scale because I don't think landscapes need to be overplanted. And clients will be like, well, it's kind of sparse. I said, give it 18 months. And I really did. I had one call me and they were like, you were right about that. Everything's grown and filled in. I was like, well, there's some to it. But, if you come in and you crowd a lot just to get that instant impact, give it 18 months, you're pruning, everything's growing into each other, and it creates just a maintenance nightmare over the course of time. So
that makes sense.
Okay, wow. Yeah.
Because 2 years, that's a long,
it's a long time.
That's a lot of time.
But you are making a big investment, and that's something to be thinking about. But that's when you come in while you're waiting on things to grow, you've got your fun pots that you're changing out, and you're just kind of like giving it time because they are dynamic and they are changing and they are growing. And so you want to give it the best running start that you can.
Okay. So if we're planting in the fall, we're talking about second spring.
Basically. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, can we talk about something that no one wants to talk about, which is budget?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
Obviously, the size of the project is going to matter and what the scope is, but can you give people some insight into what some different projects might cost?
Absolutely.
And
yeah. So, and we deal with this a lot because, a lot of times at the end of new construction, they'll be like, okay, here's $10,000. And you're like, okay, well, that's your front yard beds.
Yeah.
Like, that's about what that's going to cover. And so that's another reason to bring on a landscape architect or a designer at the start of a project. So we're always constantly kind of thinking through budget. I've learned to be the stepchild on projects where it's like everybody's so excited when they start building that house. And then they get to the end of it and they're like, we're over budget. There's no money. What can you just put some sod down? And you're like, but no, we were so excited. We had these visions of grandeur of everything we were going to plant and build, So budget is incredibly important to think about at the beginning, and there's a lot of stuff that you're going to pay for that I call unfun money that you're not going to see.
Right.
Because another thing to having a landscape have a lot of longevity is you want your grading and drainage appropriate. You want the irrigation done correctly. And that can be $30,000 out the gate on like a full landscape install or more. That is a significant portion of the budget goes to grading, drainage, dirt work. And I'm sorry, I hate to say this, it sucks. You don't see any of that, but it's the foundation. It's not the pretty stuff,
So when you say dirt work and drainage, just describe some things that, some problems that might be solving or whatever.
So let's say you're building a new construction or you've done a remodel and you're wanting to do an add-on. You've had a lot of equipment. You've had heavy trucks. You've had materials on site. And what all of that is doing is compacting the soil. And then most of the time it's just raw dirt. The rains come in, it's pushed runnels, it's got a bunch of wash, you've lost a lot of dirt. There's just kind of a mess at the end of construction based on water movement and compaction from big trucks and materials that we have to use to do that. So you want to come in, when you say dirt work, you want to get the top layer of soil back on. You want to reduce the compaction because a plant's roots cannot grow into compacted soil. You want that loamy and aerated so that root system, when you get those plants in, are very, like, they're ready to grow. They're not having to fight, to grow on that. That's what I mean when I say dirt work. We got to make sure we've got positive drainage away from the house. You'd be surprised how many times we see it directed towards the house. If you've got gutters, if you don't have gutters, where are the gutters going? You don't have to have gutters. We can do French drains and drip lines and stuff like that, which is rock and more grading and drainage and stuff, but that gets very expensive. But you really want to make sure you're avoiding compaction. You've got positive drainage away from the house. You're accommodating for where your downspouts are. You don't want a downspout just coming right on top of a patio, and these are things that, again, having a landscape architect at the beginning, we're really thinking through where we're going to move water on that.
And have you already done the soil testing at this point too, to figure out like how you need to amend the soil?
Yes and no. It kind of depends on where we are. If we feel like we need to, I'm fairly familiar with the soils at this point and know what's going to grow in our area. So really, instead of spending a lot of time on soil tests, because soil profiles can be so different throughout the site, we really just mainly focus on reducing compaction and getting positive drainage. Because you can have more trouble caused from water on a landscape than any other problem.
Okay, so you've spent $30,000 putting.
You're like, oh God! Like, no, I'm not going to landscape. This is ridiculous. This is no, but trust me, this is worth the investment on that part.
Well, but if you've got a realistic expectation to start,
this is
much better than getting it all designed.
This is a full, brand new 3,000 square foot. This is a large scale new construction project. If we're just doing French drains in your backyard or checking things like that before we put in a patio, I mean, it's going to be much less. But you're not going to spend $30,000 every time.
Right.
Nobody worry.
Okay, but you've got your that not fun part done. Your drainage is good. Your soil is not compacted.
And then you got your other flat. Your other non-fun part is the hardscape part, because that's expensive too.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about that.
Which can be beautiful, and I'm not trying to scare people away, but hardscapes can be very expensive. And that's why you want to utilize your space. You don't want to overbuild. You don't want to underbuild. You want to really make sure you've got everything that you want to do on the outside, on your outside patio. You give the designer the list, and then they can accommodate the square footage accordingly so that you don't have a vast sea of concrete. We do this a lot for pool clients because I've always refused to be the pool contractor that comes in, puts a pool, and just does 8 giant feet of concrete in a square around it. So we really work with clients. We're like, okay, are we laying out? Do you want to read a book while your kid's somewhere else playing in the pool? Really utilizing it. It's a big, scary number, but if you utilize it in a way where you're not just doing, a 20 by 20 pad because that's what somebody dropped in the plan, and you're like, okay, well, I really could get by more with like a 12 by 15, and, here's where the fireplace is going to go, and here's where our little kitchen's going to go, and that works out, but
so efficiency.
Yeah. Great word. Yeah. Yes. I forget about that word. But you want to be efficient with how you utilize your space, so you're not spending more unfun money, because we spent a lot of unfun money at this point in your project.
Yeah. Okay. So are there different dollar amounts associated with different materials that maybe would help people kind of get an idea for what makes sense?
So concrete's going to be your least expensive, which there's a lot of really cool stuff we can do with concrete now. You're looking at anywhere from $10 to $12 a square foot to do concrete.
Okay, what are some fun things you can do with concrete?
No, isn't that funny? That's like a weird sentence to say.
I know.
Concrete can be fun.
I know. You kind of caught me there.
Like, oh, it could be fun. You've got your traditional just broom finish concrete. We do a lot on our pool decks. We'll do a broom finish, and then we'll come in and we'll score it, which are big, just cut lines and those can be any size. We do larger ones that kind of give a little bit of detail and accentuation, so it's not just, again, a sea of concrete. It kind of breaks up that visual plane of larger concrete areas. You can feel like Bubba Gump on Forrest Gump, naming everything you do is from. That's everything you do with concrete. You can color it. There's integral dyes. I do not believe in painting concrete. I've never seen it work. But what you can do are integral dyes that you mix in while the concrete's being mixed in the truck. We can get, you've got a rainbow of colors on that. You can salt finish it, which comes in and you put rock salt and it makes these cool little divots in the surface, which kind of helps for anti-slip.
Yeah.
You can do a brick border. You can do a brick joint to kind of dress it up a little bit, you know,
like that,
so
yeah.
it's not, you know, especially if you've got a brick house, but if it's too much brick for doing a brick patio, normally we'll come in and we'll say, all right, well, this part will be concrete. We're going to do a nice little brick border, and then we'll do a brick ribbon or a little brick inset within a larger piece of concrete. So again, we don't want a giant sea of concrete in your backyard. So those are some of my favorite things to do with concrete.
But like you could dress it up and make it not look commercial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. There are a lot of options. And,
Yeah.
you know, if you're looking at, let's say it's $12 a square foot. I mean, we are in Atlanta. I know Mississippi prices are a little bit different. But, you know, you're really only adding $1 or $2 per square foot for each finish that you may want to do. So you could spend $16 a square foot getting a really cool concrete finish versus $38, $40 a square foot doing bluestone or flagstone.
Okay.
And still get a really nice refined finished look that ties in with the architecture of your house.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. So would you say those are probably the three biggest materials, concrete, brick, and like a bluestone? Or
yes. Flagstone, bluestone. There's a really great there's a fire rock paver that keeps, if you're really worried about burning your feet, it keeps the temperature much cooler on that. So we're doing a lot of pool decks out of the fire rock. I was kind of hesitant at first. I was like, there's no way in the Mississippi Delta summer that this is going to keep the temperature down, but it's incredible, you know. So it's another really good option. But
odd choice of name.
Yes,
right?
But and
it's called fire rock, but it keeps it cool.
Yes, but it's the same material that they use on the inside of chimneys to keep the fire. Yes,
okay.
It's they've taken that, and hope they don't come after me for getting this wrong. But it's the chimney, you know, on the inside of chimneys that you see. They've taken that, and now we've got 4 different colors, and we can do it for coping in different patterns on the hardscape.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
like,
it's
but
really
what would you call it that?
But what
that
would you
makes
call
more
that, right?
sense.
If you're not like firing it up, you know. And we did. My partner Tommy Walton in the Half Moon business took a temperature gun last summer, and we hit concrete, brick, bluestone, fire rock with the temperature gun in like July. And brick and bluestone are your hottest. The other ones,
interesting.
Yeah.
So we're
concrete
cooler. And the fire rock. Similar, or was it cooler?
It was cooler.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Concrete's going to be your best bet.
Concrete was the coolest.
Next to fire rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
let's talk about pavers, because I feel like when you say paver, I think of like Home Depot pavers.
Right.
That
they're like $1.
Yeah,
they don't
piece.
look over in the corner. They don't look great. Yeah.
So, are there other paver options? Is it the way you install it?
There's a lot of paver options. And I say that I use paver as like flagstone can be a paver. Bluestone can be a paver. I mean, these are high-end, high qualities. But to me, in my vocabulary, a paver is what we come in and we put on top of like a concrete footer on that. You can do the least expensive ones. You're not going to get that really refined, finished look. We don't do that a lot. Those are kind of the main ones that we stick to. And also with hardscapes, I'm real big on not letting clients have more than 3 in their total landscape project.
Okay.
If you've got, let's say you've got an existing concrete, you've got some brick, and you've got, we could come in, that would be a good option to come in and maybe tie in some flagstone to keep it simpler, but if you start getting more than that, you're going to get really disjointed within your cohesion, within your landscape plan. So you really kind of want to stick to 3. One could be gravel. If you've got a gravel pathway, brick, concrete,
Okay.
like that.
Okay. That's a good rule.
And
I would think most people are going to have concrete for like a driveway or something.
Concrete's kind of a given. So then you got to kind of pick, do you want to go more of the natural stone look? Do you want to go the more formal bluestone look? Do you really like the classical brick?
Okay, you mentioned gravel. Can I ask you about pea gravel? Because I truly don't understand this option.
Yeah.
Like, it drives me crazy. How do you blow it? How do you keep it clean?
Don't do it. Don't do pea gravel. But it gets in your shoe crevices. It comes inside. It gets in your car.
It travels.
Yeah.
It travels.
But I feel like people use it and make it look pretty, but then I'm like, how? Wait.
You've really got to put some effort into it, and you've got to get the edging to keep it defined. Not the plastic edging that you can also get at a big box store. There's really good metal edging. We use a lot of the Edge Right material that is core 10 steel, hammered in. It's holding it in there. We're doing a lot. If you're insistent on the gravel pathway, you like the sound of it, or you think you're trying to save money, which you're really not. You're not really saving that much more on gravel versus actually just pouring concrete. We're doing a lot with chipped slate, which is a wider, flatter, larger stone that doesn't travel
as much
move
because
as much.
It will travel.
It will move. And then again, check your water, because if you've got a big water event coming through, if you don't have got a drainage problem, it's still going to wash everything away, because slate, it is a lightweight material, so it will move, but it's not going to move as bad as, say, like pea gravel.
Yeah. I just never understand. Like, I feel like it can look pretty, like in France.
Oh, it's beautiful in France. But you don't see the whole, like, army of, like,
don't you have to, like, redo it?
Yes.
Like,
how often do you
in
have to do that?
I don't know.
At least once a year.
Once a year?
At least. I don't think our lifestyle of vehicular traffic, kids running around, leaves.
Yeah.
Like, if you're seeing it out in, like, a French chateau, there's not overhanging oaks and things like that. It's very much manicured, and it's probably been there so long that there's a very good layer of it, and a good foundation of it on that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we've kind of touched on budget. What about, like, we talked about, like, the hardscape part. What about the planting? Like, what about the plants?
The plants are my favorite part.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, this is where it gets fun, is when you get to do the plants. And if you're set on, I really want instant impact, I'm under budget, which I sound like the poor beaten stepchild again. I'm like, well, you're never like under budget. But, if you want the instant impact, you don't really want to wait the full 18 months. You can spend more money on larger plant materials. Most of your installed shrubs are going to be a 3-gallon, but if I've got clients that are really wanting to get an immediate screen or immediate impact, like ready to go, don't have the patience, like we want to enjoy it now, we'll go up to like a 7 or a 10 or a 15-gallon in some of the shrubs. Now you're tripling the price of your install with larger shrubs, because it takes more time, it takes more fuel money to move them and transport them and ship them, but on average, if you were to do a full landscape, front yard and backyard, plants alone, I would say you'd want to budget somewhere in the 10 to 20 range. I'd say you could do a really quality front yard for around 5 to 6, and that would include pine straw and stuff too,
and labor.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope I'm right, because those are our Mississippi prices that we price. But I think we do a lot of work, in and around all throughout the state, and that's kind of competitive with what a lot of my contractors are charging. on
Okay.
that. Mm-hmm.
That's not as bad as I would have thought.
Planning's really not. That's where you get that's the best part about it. It's like putting the icing on the cake,
Mhm.
where you get to really see the pretty pieces and you get the blooms and you get to really think through, what's blooming in the spring and what's going to bloom in the summer and really making sure you've got kind of an awesome visual palette with plant material.
Yeah.
I think in one of our first conversations, you talked a lot about having it installed professionally as being really important.
Yes.
And so that was really helpful for me because I guess so many of those things I never really considered. You talked about like prepping the soil and planting it the right depth, the right space and all that. So if anyone wants to go back and listen to that episode, I would highly
that is
recommend it.
very important. They're like, well, anybody can dig a hole. Well, sure, everybody can dig a hole, but there's very much a science to getting a plant in the ground, and I am very particular about that.
Okay, so what are things people do wrong? Like too deep, too wide? Okay.
Too deep. The number one thing I see is overwatering and your plants are too deep. And I think we talked about this last time. Imagine, I don't want to be wearing a wool sweater with a turtleneck in July, and your plants don't either. They need air, they need light all the way through their little root systems.
Yeah.
So if I was doing it myself, how do I know how deep to put it? Like, does the top of the soil of the thing go exactly level with the...
You want to go...
With the root ball?
Yeah, the root ball. Yeah. So the top of the soil and the root ball needs to stick out about an inch from the top of the soil.
Okay.
And then you want to go 2 times as wide. You don't want to go... What was that? Deep and wide. Do y'all remember that from like growing up in church, Sunday school? Deep and wide. That song. You want to go... Well, you want to go wider... Not deeper. So as deep as the root ball, and then 2 times as wide, and then you can backfill on that.
Okay. And what about the soil that you're putting into the hole too?
Great question. We go back and forth a lot about this because there's a lot of rule of thumb on get the soil amended, bring in soil amendment. And a lot of times that can I've seen it cause more problems than helping, because when you backfill, you want to break up that existing soil from your site, backfill the plant with that, but you're wanting to make sure that you've cut the root ball enough so that the plant roots can reach into the native soil. If you were to backfill with a soil amendment or a different type of soil, the roots are going to go out really fast and then they're going to hit the wall of the native soil and you've got it locked in, and we've seen it where it makes like a soup bowl and it just holds the water. It sponges everything
because it hasn't adapted to the natural soil, so it doesn't want to go beyond that.
You want it to adapt very quickly to the existing soil conditions, which is why working with a horticulturist, your local garden center, your favorite landscape architect, that they really understand plant material suited for your region and your area so that you're not creating a problem down the road.
Okay. Well, in Atlanta, we've got like clay soil, right? But if you go to the nursery, they're going to sell you like a black kind of garden soil.
Yeah.
So is that wrong?
It's not wrong, but if they do sell you that and you do want to amend it, when you take your little plant out, you've got the bucket, put the dirt that you dug out of the hole into the bucket, and then mix about 1/3 of the amendment in there. You want more, you can amend it. There's nothing wrong with amending. I'm not saying don't amend it. I'm saying make sure in your amending mix that the majority of the mix is what you've pulled off of your site.
Okay, so I've dug a hole, I'm taking out my dirt, and I've mixed it with the garden soil, and then I'm breaking up the space around the hole
You're
to loosen
it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I put the plant in there with the mix of the old and the new soil. Okay, I did not know this.
Yeah. Don't get potting mix, because potting mix is going to be different. They do sell. There's products out there called soil conditioner or soil amendment. That is, if you were putting a plant in the ground, don't put potting soil. You're doing soil conditioner. I feel like I'm lecturing y'all.
No,
right now, I'm like,
so
don't
I don't
do
know
that.
what we're like, yes, give it.
But you know, because
to me, it's dirt. I'm like, it's dirt that goes in a pot or on the ground, like it's dirt.
Yeah, I don't know what a 10-10-10 mix is, or like I don't know.
We can talk about fertilizer here in a minute, so that's a whole other thing. I
just saw it on the bag.
That potting soil is designed, and that's when you really get that sponge effect, because potting soil is designed with all of the mixes and the loam and the things to really hold moisture for your potted plants.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to go take your plant, put it in the hole, wrap it with potting soil, it's basically like you've taken a sponge and wrapped it around your plant, and it's just holding water.
Okay.
And nothing, your plants will not grow if the root systems are too wet.
Okay.
Yeah. So you want to go soil conditioner, soil amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Great.
So how do you do that if you're like, okay, that makes sense if it's like one hole, but what if it's like a giant bed? Like
a lot of times what we'll do if we're running into heavy clay or we're running into, we call it gumbo in Mississippi, where it's just like, it's clay, it's sand, it's just a nightmare. We deal with the pockets of this a lot. If it's really bad, you kind of want to dig out that bed, mix it on a mass scale, get a few bags or a truckload of amendment, mix it all in, and then put it back. Or take a little bit out, spread your soil amendment down, and then come after it with an old school tiller and till it in.
Interesting.
But you really want to make sure you're getting it 6 to 8 inches deep, because just doing it right there on the surface 2 or 3 inches is not going to help.
Okay.
These are things I would have never considered.
I know, and that's what's so funny is so many people don't think about this. Like you see the landscape and you see the pretty stuff, and that's why I'm always like, ooh, budget, watch your drainage, watch the dirt, watch, because there's so much science that goes into landscape planning, and it's not just, it's I can dig a hole, I can put a plant in the ground. I found it at Lowe's, and they love it up in Maine, and Lowe's decided to sell it, so I'm just going to put a plant from Maine in a Mississippi or Georgia climate, and you're never going to get anything that way. You know, so there's a lot of misinformation, I think, out there in the horticulture world.
Yeah. Okay, so we have talked a lot about the installation, but let's talk about the design a little bit.
That's what we love to do.
Say I want a patio.
Yeah.
Like, where do I start? How do I know how big to make it? Like,
what do you want to do on your patio?
I don't know. I want to drink my coffee. I have a ton of trees.
Okay.
And it's going to get like leaves everywhere.
Yeah.
During fall.
Right.
Like, so maybe just talk about some common problems. Like, where do you place it?
Okay.
How big should it be?
Right.
What materials should you use? Do you need like an overhang? Do you do umbrellas? Do you do a pergola?
Right.
Like if you need shade?
And do you have to consider existing trees and the placement of your hardscape there for that too?
You absolutely do. I'm glad you said that. Let's hit on that real quick.
Okay.
One of my dear friends and colleagues is an arborist. And so Matt and I have started collaborating a lot more on tree protection zones. And that's another thing that you're not thinking about in landscapes. If you've got a tree protection zone, you don't think about this. You see the trees, stems and limbs coming out and creating these awesome shade canopies. But did you know that underneath the surface, those roots are going out about as far as the canopy is? And if you cut one of those roots right there for your new patio that you're putting right by this house, the tree can land on it if you cut the roots in the wrong spot. So we really are trying to get better we're working on preserving a lot of really cool trees on some projects of really doing a tree protection zone and really kind of having an arborist come out and look and say, look, it's a so-and-so caliper, you need to come off at least. We're dealing with a white oak on a project right now, and we need to be 40 feet off of the tree trunk of this white oak to ensure we're not doing anything that will cause problems down the road. So
you're designing around that.
You're designing around that. You got to think through the root system. But back to the patio. All right, so we're going to drink coffee out there. So you're thinking 2 chairs.
Mm-hmm.
Are y'all going to eat dinner out there?
Sure.
Okay. Do we need a place for the grill? Does your husband have like 1 grill, 6 grills?
Yeah.
Husbands love grills.
Yeah.
So we need a grill spot.
Sure. Yeah.
Do we need a counter for the grill spot? You
No.
just want the grill.
We'll just have the grill.
Okay. Which direction does it face?
I
Do you
don't know. This is an imaginary place. So I'm like,
I was like, my iPad to be like taking notes. So,
but okay, there are a lot of questions.
That's a lot of questions that I'll start with the client and be like, okay, that's cool. Everybody wants a patio, but what are we doing on the patio? So if we're doing dining, we're going to do a seating area. We're going to stay within the 10 to 15 by 10 to 15. You really don't need to go any larger than that. You can make excellent use of a space. Those are our standard kind of patio sizes coming off like that. Because you really want to think through it too, kind of like rooms of your house, rooms of your landscape of like, okay, here's the kitchen where we're going to be eating, but when I'm drinking my morning coffee, I don't want to smell leftover charcoal from the burgers we cooked last night. So we want to make sure we've got space in between that. We want to make sure the direction of the house, we're catching good airflow, So again, when you're dealing with cooking, when you're dealing with fire pits, we really try to pay attention to airflow so that you're not sitting there smelling it. When you don't want to be. They're not pretty.
Yeah.
So.
In one of our last conversations, you were talking about how your space can really be smaller than you think because you don't have walls. And I thought that was so smart. Like, if you're designing a dining room, you have a barrier. You have a physical barrier where the end of the room is, right? But you don't have that outside.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to me just to think like making them more intimate.
Rather than large. And especially if you've got a huge lot and you're like, I'm going to build a big, awesome patio. And you're going to be really disappointed when I talk to you. And I'm like, you don't need a big, awesome patio. Like, here's how we're going to lay this out. Here's how we're going to tie it in where your back door comes off. Here's how it's going to like talk to the other spaces, windows, views, really kind of think through that and make it more of a smaller nook. Again, human nature, we don't like to be out fully exposed. I mean, think about it. We like cozy nook corner places, and that's what we want for our outside spaces too.
Okay, I've noticed some friends of mine, actually lots of friends, I feel like they have these big backyards, and when you're buying your house, you kind of see like, oh my gosh, there's this huge backyard. We've got all this space. Yes, we could do all this stuff with it. And then you're kind of like, well, I built a patio. It's 15 by 10 feet, and what else do you do back there? Like, how do you give a really big space purpose that's not like a fire pit and a patio and then another
pool?
Okay, well,
but, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, maybe you do have a pool, but like your pool's not going to take up the whole. Like, what are some ways to?
Well, and that's when you're like, okay, well, do we have kids? Do the kids need a soccer field or a baseball area? My personal landscape is very long like that. I do not need a lot of space. And so I came in and I cut it in half basically with a hedgerow. And behind the hedgerow, one day when I have time, I have cute little garden boxes that I'll do. That's where my vegetable garden will be eventually. They're there. They're not doing anything right now. But, kind of break it up. Like, do you want a garden? Do you want a pool? You really don't want to look at a garden all the time, so you can start to break up that plane with hedgerows or some privacy, or maybe you do kind of different layers like that. Or if you like a big open green space, that's when we come in and do perimeter plantings and then do really big. I love a deep flower bed with a lot of layers. And so your height, your tall layers are back towards the fence, and then we come in 3 or 4 layers kind of stepping in, so it kind of pulls that visual plane of such a large open space closer to the house.
Right. Okay.
Just give it some context.
Because I always feel like it's like, well, then you just is it just tons of grass? Like, what do you do with it? Okay, and then the other thing it seems like people are doing a lot is doing it AstroTurf.
Oh yeah.
Talk to me about AstroTurf.
Yeah, what's happening?
Are you pro? Are you against?
I love it. I think it's beautiful. I think it is incredibly expensive. So you want to talk about unfun money is how many clients are like, and I want this to be AstroTurf and this, and then we give them the price and they're like, we're just going to do grass, because you are literally, it is very expensive. I recommend doing it for small confined, tight spots that you know you're not going to get grass to grow. Courtyards, small patio homes, weird walkways that, say you've got two houses side by side. You'd like a nice strip of grass, but the houses are so tall and so close, there's not going to be a lick of sunlight that gets to it. That's when you come in and selectively use AstroTurf. It's come a long way since AstroTurf, too. There are brilliant options of very real looking synthetic grass options now. It's really, you really can't tell the difference.
But aren't we just covering our whole backyard in plastic? Like what?
You are, and it's going to be very hot. So AstroTurf is also, if we're thinking about keeping temperatures cool and creating like cool outdoor living spaces that we want to be in, AstroTurf is, and that's why minimal amounts. There is nothing wrong with beautifully done, clean, normal sod, so be selective if you're insistent on it. You don't want to do your whole backyard in artificial.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I have lots of friends who've done it recently, and I do get the appeal. But then also, and it looks great, I think, right away. Is it going to look like, how does it age, I guess?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't, I'm just going to be honest with that. I don't know, since it's a newer trend that people are doing, so we really haven't seen what it looks like in 10 years. It could, I know it's designed probably to not fade, to withstand, and again, thinking through the longevity of it is you really want to make sure that base layer, I sound like a broken record, is properly prepared, that it's draining, that you're not getting a big runnel of water coming through and then it gets uneven and you have to pull it out and start over, but getting that adequate and ready to go. It's beautiful. It looks awesome. You don't have to mow it. It's just, it is, if that's what you want, that's what you'd like to put your budget to, let's go for it. Let's figure it out. But, just know that going into it, that it is quite expensive.
I like the idea of it being contained or in a small space. Like, I know my sister did a putting green in the back of their yard, kind of behind a bunch of things, but like that's where the kids go and practice their putting. But like, I have a neighbor that did their entire front yard.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can tell.
What do we think about front yards?
No.
See, and it looks weird this time of year when you don't, like, if your yard is green this time of year, it's weird.
And that
it's
and that unnatural
almost.
color of green this time of year. Right.
So either you've got artificial turf or your whole front yard is weeds and you don't know it, because if your turf is green in early March, February, that is the only two options for it. It's kind of an unnatural look, but we've had great results with it. We used it last year for a client that had a giant oak tree in a 0 lot line area. They couldn't get grass to grow. We came in, we did a small, about the size of this table, little breath of artificial, and it's really nice. And people, if you use it sparingly, people aren't always going to know that it's fake. And that's kind of the fun. It's kind of like the party trick with it. He's like, look at my grass. And it's not, it's plastic. So
another front yard material is clover. Have you done anything with that? I feel like I keep seeing clover being used instead of grass.
Yes, we have not.
Okay. Why would you?
The nitrogen, environmental, it's got way more better. It's got much better environmental factors to do kind of a native. I think clover's native. I'm a little off on my native, non-natives. We haven't been doing a lot of that lately, but good nitrogen, good coverage. It's not going to, the reason we use as much turf grass as we do in the Southeast is it withstands foot traffic, walking on it. When you get outside of turf, there's some really cool ground covers. So, if you're not walking on it every day, if the kids aren't playing on it, if you don't need to walk through it, that is always an option to do kind of more of like a natural ground cover effect, less spraying. It's perennial. It's got the fun little blooms on it. You can make little clover flower crowns, if that's what you want to do out in your front yard, so there's absolutely like added benefits to that. But there's, it's a fascinating psychology of like turf grass within Southern culture. And it's such this like clean, neat standard. And that's what we do. And that's what we mow our yard. And it's nice and clean and green. And the edges are all lined up and the kids play on it. And, it's quality turf is kind of like a way of life in the South, So I know in other parts of the U.S. and world, they are doing different things outside of turf, but I think it's going to be a while before we really catch on to it.
And you're using turf,
stigma.
not Astro. You're just talking like
just turf, Zoysia, Bermuda,
yes.
turf. Yes, grass. Grass. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like Atlanta's strange because it's like it gets too cold for like St. Augustine, right, and like Bermuda, but then it's too hot. I think we have like zoysia in our yard.
Y'all should have zoysia. Should be good,
but it looks terrible in the summer.
Really?
Well, because it gets all brown and. Or wait, no. Do we have? Wait, what's the other one?
Do you have Kentucky blue?
No, I don't know. Well, ours looks good in the winter and bad in the summer.
Okay, so you've got more of a northern grass. I don't think it's zoysia. We might need to double check. Zoysia is like our go-to. That's like it like shade.
What is the other one?
I don't know. Are we going on a field trip after
fescue?
this?
Is it fescue?
Fescue. We have fescue.
Yep, fescue and Kentucky blue. You see a lot of those in Nashville and Atlanta. Those are cool season grasses.
Yeah.
So, and that's what's crazy about Atlanta is you can get away with it, but August and July
terrible.
hit, it's gonna,
We need to redo it. But
so. Best practice, you're going to get the best look with zoysia. And there's a bunch of different varieties of zoysia, but it can handle shade. It can handle sun. It doesn't send the runners out like Bermuda does. It's like putting an awesome carpet down.
How do you get rid of crabgrass? This is like my...
Ooh, that's a tough one.
And English ivy.
Yeah. Oh, God. English ivy?
Yeah.
Oh, hard.
I got problems.
Bless you.
I got problems.
Do you have both? I have both.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, hand pulling is the best.
Hand pulling?
And like crabgrass.
Yeah.
There's like a claw that you can get. And you just
is it the grandpa thing?
You claw it, twist it, pop it out. Yep. Claw it, twist it.
The grandpa thing.
Pop it out. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but how often do you have to do that?
I mean... probably a few seasons or talk to somebody that's a really good like spray applicator on that. But crabgrass is tough. I've got horrible wild onions in my backyard that I can't get up. I mean, I have this lovely little onion crop and all we can do, we've tried to spray it. That twist, pull, pop, twist, pull, pop.
Yeah. So, okay. Do I have can I just, because what happens is like there's a bald spot, right? And then the crabgrass comes in. So then when I pull out the crabgrass, isn't more crabgrass just going to grow there?
If you get it from the root system, it won't. So that's why you got to like dig deep and pull it up because that's going to be the best way to kind of keep it. If you do it, you create a bunch of bald spots, come in with a little bit of sand in the summertime.
Okay.
Grass loves sand. And that helps if you've got low divots, low spots. A little sand when the grass is actively growing will help kind of even it out. And a lot of times the sand grass likes to run towards the sand. And so you can really kind of like instigate it to grow and move to those areas. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I also have deer. Sorry.
Now, ivy,
no, you answered.
Ivy's another...
Yeah.
Woo, sister.
Goats.
And is there...
We did. We used goats. We used goats for a client in Atlanta, actually, to clear off an English ivy hillside.
But then what do you put in its place?
Well, that's a good question.
And does it get down into the roots? Or is it just going to
they're still kind of getting the top. So you really have to
how much does it cost to get the goats to come to your house?
You remember I don't remember what it's
serious. Every time I see this, I'm like, is this
find out
$2,000? Is it $50,000?
We really did. We turned them loose on a hillside not far from Kendall's house for a week. I think they were down there cleaning up the hillside. Goats and sheep. But I don't know. I don't remember what it cost. We can find out though.
But okay, because I have a hillside that has
you have
English
a very
ivy, but
steep hillside.
What do I do with it once I get rid of the English
and that's
ivy?
the thing. Is like you do have to think about that on these hillsides where this ivy's been growing for years, and it is acting
everywhere.
as a retaining wall.
And it's not just on my property. So if it's on my
everywhere.
neighbor,
right,
it's
going to creep.
And if you don't get it off the neighbors, it's going to keep.
So should I even try?
Vigorous. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I would just come in and really take a weed eater and just trim the edges really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And try to get it. It's great and if you don't do ivy, you're going to have to do another ground cover,
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well kind of work with what you've got since it's back there. But I would come in and just, clean up the edges, weed eat them. If it's too thick, come in and just weed eat the top parts out, let some sun get down to it, because ivy's just kind of like a shrub. It'll shade itself out over time, and then you just get a bunch of... I helped a client one time. I mean, it was 3 feet of ivy that we had to deal with getting out. It was crazy. It's crazy how it does.
Yeah. We don't have that, but it is just like, I feel like once it gets someplace, it's everywhere.
Right.
And so is there a better time of year to kind of go in and
right now
clip in it?
I would do it right now, cut it way back. And then when it starts growing again in the summertime, it'll be set back a little bit. And the other thing to do, if it's like creeping into the neighbors, if it's creeping into your landscape, is come back with some of that steel edging I was talking about and really kind of get like a nice edge for it. And that goes down 2 inches in, which will help with the roots and stuff coming through. So cut it way back, get some edging set up for it, and that will kind of help. That's not going to completely tame it, but it's going to help kind of keep it contained and at least give you kind of some clean visual lines with it on that.
Yeah. Last year I did a weird thing. And
are you going to tell us about it? Tell us more.
Well, so like there's some poison ivy, and then there's also English ivy, just kind of all in this kind of like little brambly patch. And so I got some poison ivy like spray, but I don't want to spray that everywhere because I don't want to like kill the good bugs and the good nutrients in there.
Right.
So I got some of those bingo daubers, like those like containers that have like fabric top, and you just dab them. They're like little dabbers. So I put that in there, and then I would trim the ivy and kind of like dab the poison so it was localized.
That's the best way to do it.
I don't know if it worked or not. It's still there this year, but it's maybe not as bad in some spots.
Well, and you probably didn't get enough concentration on your bingo dabber. You really want to get it.
No idea what you're talking about.
I'll try a diagram.
It's plastic, and it's got the little sponge on the bottom of it, and it's like a little squeeze too.
Oh, it's like a paintbrush kind of?
Yeah.
It's like a foam.
Yeah, in like kindergarten terms, they use them for painting.
Plant thing. I'm like, what?
No.
It's like an arts and crafts.
We run to Hobby Lobby now while we're out there. We're running around to Home Depot and Hobby Lobby as we get going on our backyard landscape project.
Okay, so you were just like literally dabbing.
I was like cutting edges and then dabbing them.
That's the best way to do it. Is get it directly to the source,
because I wanted it to get into the stems of the.
And
I think it worked on some of it. I don't have like as much overgrowth in some areas.
It'll stun it for sure.
I'll go out there next weekend. That's what I'm doing.
Some pics. This is great. We'll know more.
Bingo.
We did an experiment.
Bingo. Got all the ivy out. Amazing.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, what about deer? Because that's my pest.
Ooh, deer. Yeah, literally. Oh dear. Deer are tough, and there's a long, landscape architect joke that if you really want to keep deer out of your flower beds, you need to feed them with a corn feeder in your backyard, because they
give them something else to eat.
Yes, just like us, we would rather eat French fries than salad.
Yeah,
and deer are the same way, But if you do that, you're opening up a whole nother smorgasbord of issues, because the minute you don't fill up that corn feeder, they are going to head straight to your hydrangeas, you know.
Right.
You train them to come to your house.
You've trained them to come to your house, right? You're ringing the dinner bell every time. So,
and what about other animals?
And you've got raccoons and possum. You know, it really is a joke. I really don't think, I don't want Metro Atlanta popping up a bunch of like corn feeders. So that being said, deer, there are loads of deer resistant plants. There are ones they're going to eat more than others. They will tear up a hydrangea.
Mm-hmm.
An Indian hawthorn is basically like a hot chocolate chip cookie.
Roses?
They will eat roses. Deer will not eat anything that has a fragrance. They don't like heavy fragranted things.
Okay.
So we're actually trying a little experiment right now, because we did a lot of deer resistant plants. The deer came in and ate everything. And so what we have gone in and done is, in a few flower beds, we've come in and clumped rosemary in the beds because of the high, heavy fragrance of the leaves and I mean, everybody knows how well rosemary smells. To see if that will kind of deter them, because I've heard that will. It's just really hard. They're going to eat if they are hungry, and, you know, developed areas, their food sources are getting lower and lower. So it's really hard to find something that they're not going to eat when food supplies are low, you know, in the natural world. But fragrance is important. Just paying attention to deer resistant versus not deer resistant, knowing they're going to tear up a hydrangea. Those are off limits if you know you've got deer problems. What was the other? There's another. I've had some really good luck with loropetalum. They don't seem to eat loropetalum. They don't really seem to eat camellias. Kind of go through some things that they're not eating. But it's, like I said, it is very hard. I did have a client, because I kept getting hit with it when I was over at his house, got one of the motion sprinkler devices. You know, you walk past it and that arm, it goes,
oh my God, they were doing this to real deer.
I walked through it one time and I was like, well, I won't do that again. And 5 minutes later, and I was like, oh my God. Like, okay. I was like, can we turn this off for a minute while I'm trying to like finish up some stuff? Irish Spring soap has the heavy fragrance out there, bars of soap.
So what do you do?
You shave off bars of soap and kind of scatter it around areas. Again, heavy fragrance.
I hate that smell too.
Yeah, right. You're not going to want to go eat your salad and smell Irish Spring soap. But it was so funny. I did have a client. They were like, I told them, they're like, we got bad deer problem. I was like, okay, get you some Irish Spring soap.
So what do you take, like a cheese grater or something?
Yeah.
Or a potato peeler?
She goes, how many squirts do I put? She was going to get like the body gel and like squirt it
liquid
around.
hand soap.
I was like, okay, no. You got to get the old school green like bar of soap, cheese grater, like.
How long does that last?
Scatter it around. Okay, like
not again. How long do I have to? How many applications?
I mean, you're going to have to put a lot, especially if it rains. You know, if it's rainy, it's going to melt it down.
And then it's all soapy and sudsy.
Right. It's just right. It's all soapy and sudsy. It's, you know, and then everybody's like, wow, they really smell clean in their yard. It's tough. I mean, and it's getting worse and worse, I'm seeing, with deer populations, you know. So just really try to avoid stuff that they're not going to eat, or try to get something with some fragrance out there, because there is really not one sure bet at this point.
Okay. Because it seems like we have some areas where like we had just planted stuff, and that is even worse, because then they just pull it straight out of the ground.
Yep.
Right.
Whereas we have some oak leaf hydrangeas, and they're okay because they're finally established.
Yes. That tender new growth of new plants, they love that. You know.
So if I was real, you know, on it about the Irish Spring, or like I've heard some people say cayenne pepper or something.
Yeah, pepper.
While it's young, and then after a couple of years, maybe I don't have to do it as much. Or
I mean, that's a thought. You could try it and see. Yeah. Okay. Also, I think we've tried this before over at our hunting camp. This sounds so weird. Human hair like from like a hair
from your head or
yes,
your
like
hair
from
brush?
like a like
Collect
your
your hairbrush.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's got a lot. They're not going to go where the human smell is. This podcast is taking a turn. We're talking about Irish Spring and human hair.
No, because I've heard that also. Because like
invited back. Sorry.
No, because there's like coyote urine. You can buy that like in pellets.
God, yeah,
listen.
You can spray that. There's any kind of gimmick that you can think of, but I would, or you can go old school and get some just fencing to put around it and keep it tight. And that's real tacky, So you're either going to smell good, you're going to look tacky, or you're going to have deer eating plants. But I guess we're going to get you a corn feeder for your backyard.
But we do have coyotes in our neighborhood, so I feel like if I put out food, I'm going to get even worse.
Well, and that's a bad thing for pets, but it's actually pretty good for like deer management. It should
coyotes?
Yeah, keep the deer somewhat at bay.
Okay. My neighbors really want to trap the coyote or have someone kill it.
Oh no!
Well, maybe I'm okay with it if it keeps the deer away.
Should keep the deer away. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All
yeah.
Right.
Sorry, there's not a one-stop shop on keeping the deer away.
Yeah.
Is it sunny where your new stuff is? Or because you've got a lot of shade in your yard.
Yeah, I have a lot of shade.
I don't think rosemary would be your option. You could try some rosemary back there just to see, but rosemary really likes hot, full blasting sun.
We've noticed they won't come up like that close to the house, so most of the stuff like right on our house is fine. But we've been trying to like grow some big things along the street and like big shrubs and stuff.
Yeah.
And and they'll just rub up against the trees that we had just planted. And they pulled roses like out of the ground by the whole root.
It's
real sad.
It's painful. They got after we had a lovely little magnolia coming up over at our cabin, and they rubbed their antlers and sheds and just trimmed the whole magnolia tree up to the top. My mother was mortified. So I'm like, well, sorry, this is a deer camp. So, but it's different if it's at your like actual house. It's very frustrating, so.
Well, and we also just never saw them. We never saw them for a while, so we didn't know that's what it was. We kept thinking like, what is eating our plants?
Right. But kept getting upset with your kids.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here in person.
Fun to be back. I know, and get to see it.
Yes, we finally get to meet, and thank you for being our first guest on our little gardening mini series.
Definitely. Happy to do it.
All right. Well, tell everyone they can find you, follow you, and see your
work. Please do. So the new company is Half Moon Living. This is an outdoor design build for pools, patios, outdoor kitchens. It's halfmoonliving.com, and it's on Instagram. It's halfmoon_living. And then, of course, Brantley Snipes Landscape Design is my company. That's the website address. And then the Instagram and Facebook handles are Brantley Snipes Landscape Design. So
amazing.
And we had some really good people reach out after the last one, So if y'all have questions, want to reach out, got a problem, I love talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm open to it.
And let us know what the questions are too. We can always have you back and do a round two, maybe for the summer.
That'd be fun.
Maybe something for fall planting or something.
So y'all send in your questions. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's make this a more regular thing.
All right.
Yeah.
We'd love it. Okay, that's our show. Don't forget to tune in next week for our second episode in this little mini series. We're going to be talking more about plants and pots and everything you need to be doing as far as, plant matter to get ready for this growing season. So, containers. And then we're also going to be talking about house plants later, some flower arranging. We're going to talk about outdoor entertaining and all of that stuff. So, more to come. So, tune in next week. And that's our show. You can find all of the show notes on our blog, howtodecorate.com/podcast.
To send in a decorating dilemma, email your questions to podcast@ballarddesigns.net so we can help you with your space.
And of course, be sure to follow us on social media at Ballard Designs.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And please leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Until next time, happy
decorating.